Welcome. I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and this is Dialogues on How to Build a Culture of Empathy. And I'm so glad to be here with Craig Appel. Appel? Is it?
Appel.
Appel. Appel. Yeah, thanks, Craig, for joining me for this dialogue.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
So this is by way of introduction that you're the Executive Director of Hand in Hand Parenting. And it's an organization that it says our mission is to support parents and provide them with the insights and skills they need to listen to and connect with their children in a way that allows each child to thrive. And your website is Hand in Hand Parenting. So what we wanted to talk about was, hear about your program, about you and your program, and especially about the role of empathy in your program.
Great. So a little bit about me first is I'm actually the new executive director. I joined Hand in Hand Parenting 4 months ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. I have 4 children myself, 3 sons, and we had recently adopted a baby girl who's now a year old. And, for the previous 15 years, I was working in the environmental field on clean energy and those type of issues. And really, when I started having children, I came into this world as a do-gooder. I'm trying to change the world, and I think a lot of us are. And that's how I got into environmental work. But as I started having children, I really started to realize that a lot of the environmental work is really just making sure things don't get worse for the next generation. But it's really not transforming the world in a way that needs to be transformed. And I started to see that helping parents and really changing the dynamic in the family and how children are raised is a huge leverage point for changing the world and helping, raising empathic children who are respected and listened to and have a new definition of understanding of what respect for each other means has huge butterfly rippling effect in terms of changing the world. And so, I accepted this job about 4 months ago, but Hand in Hand Parenting has been an organization working in this field for 25 years. It was founded by Patty Whiffler. And what we really do is we provide concrete tools for parents to connect with their children. And that connection is really the critical piece in helping children thrive, building emotional intelligence and social intelligence, and also, relieving trauma. Small and big traumas that are a part of growing up as a child, and how do we as parents play that role in helping our children and really facilitating what they already know how to do, which is to relieve that trauma and be free of that. And then we model the behavior of listening with empathy. And that's how we've seen help them grow into socially and emotionally intelligent children.
Well, what I was hearing there is that you've been wanting to do cultural change and be a do-gooder, and that you've seen that the family and parenting can really be an area where you can really have a real impact and has ripple effects.
Absolutely. And it's not just, I saw that coming from my previous work, where so much of the work in the environmental movement is adversarial against the bad guys, whether it's the coal industry or the loggers or whoever. And so much of the solutions as humans is people coming together and being able to hear each other. And so that's, on the big scale, but also even, as a nonprofit professional, I've been in the nonprofit kind of management world for 15 years, and even in the business world, what people are looking for when they're hiring employees is people who can collaborate, who can truly listen to each other, who can come with their own confidence and knowledge that they're smart and they bring something to the table, but also have something to learn, kind of that mix of confidence and humility, which is, the critical piece, I think, for people to listen to each other and really learn from each other.
Well, I've come to the same conclusion as well. I've worked in a lot of different areas in terms of how do we create more empathy in the business world and social action. We actually have this empathy tent that we set up, in downtown Berkeley to advocate for empathy. So I've also come to the to see that it's really the family, it's the family and parenting, and that environment is the most common social institution in the world. So if we can have an effect in nurturing an empathic environment, that can really have large impact on society. And
absolutely.
so it sounds like you're really the hand-in-hand parenting. I see you mentioned a lot about listening, about connection. Those seem to be real core values.
Absolutely. Well, I think that, you know, I mean, a lot of science in the last 15, 20 years has, and you probably know this much better than I do, coming new to this field, you know, emphasizes the importance of connection and emotional intelligence and social learning and all those pieces, which, and then, you know, all the child development work around attachment theory is pretty well understood. So what hand-in-hand parenting does is it really provides, we have 5 tools for how do you build that connection and deepen the attachment with your children, you know? So, and it starts with, I mean, I think it starts with this kind of new definition of respect for children. You know, we're not trying to get them to behave the way we think they need to behave. So much of when we see them cry or have a tantrum, it brings up fear and anxiety in us because it's, you know, it might be in public or we're just uncomfortable with those kind of big emotions and big feelings. When that's the moment that children are healing themselves. And what's the role we can play as parents by listening to them with love and attention and warmth in those, especially in those trying moments. We call that stay listening is the tool. And we practice with parents. It's not easy to do when your kid is crying for 30 minutes and sitting on your lap. So much of our instinct is to, oh, just give them a pacifier, or, you know, they must be hungry, feed them, or worse, you know, hit them, shut up, stop, you have to behave, etc. So we're, you know, really teaching parents, helping parents go through the process of listening in those trying moments with love and affection. And that really starts with empathy. To understand, you know, we do a lot of kind of background of what is your child going through in those moments, and how do you put yourself in their shoes? You know, when they're crying, they're asking for help, you know, and the first thing they want is to be held close. And sometimes they don't want to be held, but sometimes you just to be close. They really are crying for connection. That's usually when they are acting out, is when they feel disconnected in these moments. So, you know, I mean, maybe I'll just talk about these tools really quickly.
Great.
So stay listening is this one where you know, basically get close to your child with warmth and love and affection and listen without judgment and without guidance when they need you the most, when they're crying or having tantrums.
The core of empathy.
Right. A lot of those moments come when, you know, we also believe that parents, you know, as a parent, you know, we are it's not authoritarian parenting, which is, you know, hitting your kids and, you know, you must do this, more military, but authoritative, and that we are the authority in their life and we're the ones helping to set the boundaries to make them feel safe. So a lot of those tears and tantrums come when we set a boundary, you know, no, you can't have cupcakes before dinner. And what we find is, you know, when we set these boundaries, also setting with love, you know, it's not a slap in the hand, don't touch that. It's, no, honey, this is why. Small things will set off big emotions. And what's happening, and we're actually, that's a gift we're giving to our children, because those emotions are them releasing their tensions and trauma, probably not related to the, you know, the fact that we cut their grilled cheese sandwich in diagonal when they wanted it in square. But then in those moments when they're crying, instead of abandoning them or giving them time out, that's really when they're asking for connection the most. And so we work with parents on, you know, how to listen to their children in those hard moments. And so that's, you know, setting the limit brings often these moments of crying when we talk about stay listening. And then we have 3 other tools that we incorporate. One we call special time, which is in those moments when things aren't, you know, when things are just fine, you offer your children 5, 10, whatever minutes where they're in charge. Whatever they want to do, you do. And it's such a great moment where you're empowering them and letting them understand that not only are they worthy of your love, but they're worthy of being followed. Like, it builds their confidence. And those moments, you know, we think of that as kind of filling their tank of connection, so that when they're out in the world and, you know, you're staring at them with loving, you know, I'll give you an example with my son. he asked me to play an Indian version of Chutes and Ladders. And so we played it, and I roll the dice, and he's like, no, I get to roll the dice. And so, normally I would say, no, this is the rules, but this is the moment where he's in charge. So he rolls for all of us, and he's moving me, he's moving himself ahead, and he's like, no, Daddy, I want you to catch up with me, so I'm going to roll just for you and catch up. And I just stared at him with the love and attention that I was feeling for him at that moment. So, that's this tool where you really are building that connection up. So then when he's off at school and things aren't going well, he's got a wellspring of that connection. He knows how safe he is and loved. We have another tool we call play listening, which is, kind of a modification on the stay listening, but it's really bringing some levity to sometimes challenging situations. When I have 3 sons, and so they're fighting. It starts as play, which is, we're a family that lets our children play roughly with each other. I think that's important for children need to do that. But, sometimes it gets out of hand. And then instead of coming in and saying, oh, it's your fault, and blaming and shaming, and, play listening is a way to kind of join the play and just diffuse the situation with laughter. So I become the one who's, oh, how come nobody ever listens? And it's so hard. And I'm getting, and then the kids will start hitting me with pillows. And I'm like, oh no, I'm getting crushed by pillows. And then the laughter is another way, just like tears and tantrums, is another way for them to release tension. And then sometimes that leads to them deeper emotions of crying, etc., when the stay listening comes in. And then I think the last tool we have is called listening partnerships. And this is really, I think, unique in that, although I've heard, some of the conversations you've had on your website are talking about the same thing, but it's really allowing parents the chance to talk and listen to each other.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, a mutual listening where, because it's really hard in those moments when your child is crying over, not getting to go to play with the dollhouse, and you grew up with a parent who never bought you a dollhouse. And all of those, so much of our parenting is built on the traumas and hurts that we experienced as parents, or as children. Some of us were hit or just ignored or scolded, however that parenting shows up. To break that cycle, we need to be able to have a listening ear. And so we spend a lot of time in these classes with parents listening. I mean, it actually starts with just listening to parents, whatever you want to say, without judgment, with love and attention to that person, understanding that person can figure out what they need to figure out. We're not there to provide advice. It's just listening. And so we do that back and forth. So you practice listening to each other and being listened to, which is often hard for, especially dads, I think, to ask for that help and be somebody who is to say, hey, I really need somebody to listen to me. So that's the last piece, is listening partnerships. And I think that's a critical piece, so parents feel supported by other parents. And, I was thinking about this as we were talking, the idea of empathy in parenting by connection. I mean, it really starts with the fact that parenting is hard, and we all know that every parent is finding it difficult. There's no parent who has it great all the time, and we understand that. And our job is not to tell you how to do it. It's to listen to what you're going through and understand, and with a supportive ear, so that you can start to figure out, wow, I know I don't want to do it that way. Maybe there's some other ways that I can do this.
Well, maybe I can recap what I was hearing there about so in your hand-in-hand model, you have 4 basic principles or approaches that you're using. The first one is that you're really listening to the children, having a time, what's going on, really being there, being present, listening to what's going on instead of, pushing away, or maybe the naughty corner. I don't know if you're that you are there hearing what's going on for them and bringing them closer to have a sense of connection and maybe more dialogue.
Yep.
The other part was, there was the part of if there's relationships, if they're in relationship, they're getting rough, you kind of bring in humor and kind of diffuse the tension or the conflict with humor and kind of playfulness.
Absolutely.
Is another part. There was the part, it seemed like a real big part is the parenting, that it's like parents need support, and that you're bringing parents together so they can kind of co-support or mutually support each other. You maybe have facilitators that are there to kind of hear them. So it's a very listening and hearing part. And I think I missed one piece over there.
The other piece is that one of the things that we call, well, two of them. One is special time, which is that those moments where,
that's right,
where you're really just filling them up with connection by letting them, in this, there's a natural power dynamic between little kids and big grown-ups, and turning that table so that children, aren't always being told what to do, but they get to be in charge.
I see.
It builds that connection, and it builds trust between you. So in those moments when they are crying and having tantrums, you're the one they trust because they've seen that they can trust you to do what they want when they need you to do what they want. So, and then the final piece is, which I think is critical, it's actually kind of the first piece, which is setting limits. Because children do, a lot of times when they're scared, it's because they don't know the boundaries of, the great unknown is not a good thing for a 6-year-old. They need to know that that street is where danger lies. And our job is to keep them in a safe space where they can then be what children are, which is free and joyful and explorative and empathic. I mean, you've seen children on the playground. They're naturally empathic. When another child cries, they're the first ones over there, usually just staring at them with love or just a connection of some kind, not even love. It's really just interest, as opposed to sometimes the parents say, oh, when you're crying, we're going to put you away. Children have that natural desire to be interested when people are hurting. So
they want to contribute too.
That's right. And they know that to do that, sometimes you just need to be there and listen, not correct or direct.
Well, so the one that I had missed was there's this notion of power over and power with.
Right.
So that seems to be a big part of the parenting models, is how is power within the relationship. And it's like the authoritarian might be, power over and even using physical punishment to impose that. Yep. And what I was hearing there, one of the processes you have is like, okay, for this limited time, for this space, 10 minutes or whatever you're wanting to do, I will do with you. So you have this time to kind of explore your own power in a sense.
That's right.
And I will listen to it, and then we'll go along with it. And you're kind of like teaching, like a sense, maybe a responsibility around power, or that you do have some. You're not like totally suppressed and have to just obey.
And I would say that that's it's not really, because that's more subconscious that they're getting that they have power. It's really letting them feel they're the most important thing in the world at that moment, and they have some autonomy. It's and that what they're feeling matters, and that's really also kind of, I think, one of the roots of empathy is that we're showing them by our behavior that what they're going through is what is happening. We're validating their experience as the most important thing.
Well, that seems to be part of the kind of the dynamic, is kind of a parenting that's very authoritarian in the sense is just, do what I say and that's it.
Right.
And the other is the hearing, and that's maybe where the empathy comes in, is the listening to and the hearing what are the feelings and needs and desires, and what is someone going through, what is a child going through, and how do you do the reciprocal, because there's a sense of reciprocal empathy if it's just all going one way. Are you kind of like teaching this reciprocal, like I'm listening to you, but it also means you listen to what's going on for me, and that we come up with some kind of creative solutions.
I think that's in the in the parents, in the listening partnerships with parents, that's where we really focus. But with children, because where they are developmentally, it depends on the age. When they're 6, I think we always think it's a good idea if sometimes you got to get to the doctor's appointment and the kid just won't put on his shoes, and you don't have 30 minutes to listen to a tantrum and hold them while they're really crying about their feet hurting 6 years ago. In those moments, you have to get where you have to go. And so, that's a time to hold your child but still explain, still communicate as you would want to be communicated with. I'm sorry that I have to do this, but we have to get in the car because we're going to the doctor's appointment. And I know this isn't what you want to do, but this is what we have to do. And, our experience is that over time of doing special time and play listening, your children are naturally cooperative. And in those moments, often they will just come along, even though they rather not. But I think that at the young age, it's not processing feelings with your child, because that's really why you need a grown-up to listen to you, because these feelings are going to come up, and our job isn't to put that on those kids. Our job is to be there for them. But then we need somebody to talk to.
Okay.
But as I think as kids get older, in their teens, you're moving from more of a manager of the situation to a collaborator. And that certainly, hopefully the behavior you've been modeling when they're little, they're able to just pick up on how you listen because you've been listening to them. That's, that's one of the things we see as kids get older.
Oh, I see. So you've been modeling the listening, so they're going to see, oh, I've been listened to, so I'm going to be listening to others too.
Right.
And then so a really big part of it is that sounds like that the parents can get together, and if they can share and kind of have that mutual listening, that mutual empathy, then they can kind of work through the problems, maybe even come up with their own solutions, or even share solutions and strategies for going forward.
That is absolutely right. And I think that's a missing, parenting tends to be a lonely job. Even at the playground, it's very rare that parents will say, oh, how are you doing this? What do you think of this? People are hands off in our culture in that way, in many communities. So finding somebody who can actually listen to you in those, for those deep hurts that you have, that will help get those out of the way so you can listen without your baggage to your children, is a critical piece. And I think, and parents, that takes practice too. So parents get to practice with each other, not only listening and talking to each other, but then how to listen to their children, because they're practicing with a grown-up as well. And how do you keep your attention without offering advice, just by, with that warmth and connection with the person you're actually listening to?
How do you set that up? Like, what does it look like for the parents? What is the environment? Because it sounds like you're creating the container, the environment for them, and have some processes and tools for them to create that environment. So we actually have 70 certified instructors around the world. This is a global activity. We have in-person classes where, when I started at Hand in Hand, I actually took one of those. It was right here in Palo Alto. So an instructor, we had 7 parents, and it starts with, the instructors are really good at kind of building that feeling of trust, and starting with actually explaining to people, this is how we want you to listen in this atmosphere, which is not, oh yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I've done the same thing with my kids. Not starting immediately offering advice, but literally just listening as people, so you can build that safe space where people feel that they're not being judged. And I was amazed how quickly, and you've probably experienced this many times, but how quickly a culture of trust built among these 7 parents who didn't know each other. And everybody was crying within the first day, telling their stories. And a lot of it was what happened to them as parents, as children, but even more was about the moments when they felt they were bad parents, and nobody was judging them. So and I think the instructor that was teaching this class, she does a great job of basically welcoming people at first with a thank you for coming to this class, because it means you're thinking about your parenting. And I'm not here to teach you how to be better. I'm here to help you do what you want to do. So it's, kind of keeping that kind of respect and empathy for those parents, because nobody also wants to be told what they're doing is wrong. They know that they know it's wrong. I knew what I was doing was wrong in many ways, but I didn't know how to fix it. And I'm slowly getting those tools. So we offer these in-person classes around the world. We've also, starting in 2013, we offer online groups. We call this the Parent Starter Class. It's like a 6-week course. And that's been really interesting in that you might have parents from around the world gathered together either on video conference like this or by phone, doing the same thing. Like they read a bunch of materials, then they'll ask questions, and there's always, most of the time is spent listening. And what's been interesting is even on the phone, when you feel that for certain people, it's actually easier on the phone when nobody's right in front of them.
and they're feeling more free to actually share their feelings as long as they know that somebody's listening warmly on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So we run these courses, online also. And, when we started this in 2013, we were reached through that and some other, we have kind of one-off books and videos and calls where people can learn about one specific thing, like, how do I get my kids to eat or sleep or those kind of things. It started in 2013 or 2011, actually. There was about 2,000 people a year doing this work. And now in 2014, it was 5,500 people. So it's growing, I think, as the science and the information about the value of social and emotional intelligence spreads, more parents are realizing that's how I raise my kids is critical to how the world is going to come out.
Well, I've noticed with your program, I looked through your website,
Yeah.
and it's not so explicit about empathy. You're really very explicit about listening and
Right.
connection. And so I'm just wondering about the empathy part in
Right.
terms of the explicit. I think implicitly it's really it's core to what you're doing, but it hasn't been as explicit as.
Absolutely. I think
I'm just wondering about that.
That's right. Because it's most of what we do is built on that science of connection and attachment and how important that is for children. But I think you're right. And I think, it is implicit, but really it's at the core of what we do. I mean, when you're listening to this child, what you're doing is, you're not looking at their actions through our frame, which is, oh my God, they're loud. Oh my God, it's scary. Oh my God, it's, they're going to hurt themselves. Oh my God, people are watching. All that is our frame. And so what we're really teaching is how do you get into that? How do you, for at least a short time, put yourself in their shoes? And so we help you understand what they're going through so that it's easier to listen in those moments. And parents in particular, when your kid gets hurt, you feel hurt. I mean, that's, you understand the empathic connection between you and your child. But you're right. I mean, it's not explicit in what it's on our website, but that's, definitely what, at the core of what we're teaching is that children deserve to be met where they are, and parents when you're listening to them.
Yeah.
And this is how you do it,
Yeah, I've seen that so much. I don't have children, but I'm an uncle, and my brothers and sister, they each have children, and just for them to be, I do listening with them, and just they're sometimes in tears, like they just need to be heard.
That's
it's
right.
Like just what's going on at school or this and that, and it's just so hopeful for them. So
absolutely, just to have you to listen, and again, you don't need to be a parent to be empathic with your siblings. I mean, they're going through fear of inadequacy and trauma from their earlier life, and just to have a warm listening, that empathy among parents too, that that listening partnerships, we really emphasize that you're not only are you not judging people, but that you're not correcting them. You're just being the vessel for them to express what they need to express. And because how that feels, that you also need that. And so I think the empathy is basically implicit in that listening relationship as well.
Okay, Craig. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your about yourself and your program and about the parenting. I want to thank you for that. And
thank you. I'm really glad we could talk.
And that was handinhandparenting.org if anyone would like to follow up on that. And it's a whole website full of many decades of resources.
And it's, we're a nonprofit, and a lot of our resources are free. We also charge for the classes. There's two ways you can raise money. One is to have people who can afford to pay for it, and another is to have people who can afford to pay for others pay for it. And so we're a mix of people paying for services and raising money to provide for people who otherwise couldn't have access.
Okay, great. Thanks.